Thank you. Actually, I've come here to learn rather than to teach because I want to learn what it takes to build a good professional army that is respected and loved by the people. This is the kind of army I want our Burmese Tamador to be, the kind of army it was meant to be when my father founded it back in the 1940s, early 1940s. Of course, to get rid of the British. But not because we didn't like the British, but because we loved freedom better. I think all of us have a right to be free. That is what human beings are made to be. We want to be free to assert our own identity, to be able to follow our conscience, and to live in a world where we are the equal of all others. The reason why I came to Sandhurst is to find out what leadership means in military terms as well as in human terms, because you cannot get away from the fact that soldiers are human beings as well. The very first British military man that I felt I got to know was General Slim, because I read his memoirs when I was quite young to try to get to know more about the war in Burma. And I liked him because he liked my father. It's a good reason for liking somebody. And he made the point that the reason why he liked my father was because he could do business with him. That also I like. A military should be about doing its own work. Every organization in the land must understand what its duties are, what its responsibilities are, and what is not for them to do. That is very important. Over the last several decades, actually over the last half century, which is a long time, I think none of you cadets are anywhere near that age, our military has become politicized. This to me is not a desirable development. It was not meant to be that way. When early in the days of the newly fledged Burma Independence Army, my father said, this was in Burmese and I'll translate it into English. It doesn't sound quite the same because it rhymes in Burmese and it doesn't in English. But what he said was that the country should not be the servant of the army must be the foundation of the country. That is exactly what you are trying to teach people in Sandhurst. You serve to lead. We had a small discussion this morning as to whether to serve to lead was the same as to lead to serve. And we came to the conclusion that it is not the same, and it is better to put serve in front of lead, because the essential thing is service. Service that is rooted in strong principles. You have to understand what service is in order to be able to serve correctly. I said earlier that the first British military figure with whom I became familiar was General Slim. And I want to talk a little bit more about him because in a book about the Indian Army, A Matter of Honor is the title of the book, he was described by Philip Mason as a complete man. I thought that this was the greatest compliment that any man could be given, that he was a complete man. And Philip Mason wrote in this way, his success as a general was not so much because he was a brilliant tactician or a strategist as because of his moral and human qualities. He was a complete man, an integrated character, following a straightforward course with modesty, courage, energy, and resource. I agree with this assessment of a complete man. You can be a complete man whether you are a military man or a civilian. And what we need in our country is an army that recognizes the worth of civilians and the importance of civilian authority over the military. All of you here are trained for leadership, but what I find most interesting is that all of you here are trained to be leaders under a civilian authority. This is something that you are taught, perhaps not so obviously, but this is the training that you receive every day. That although you are trained to be leaders, you also have to be followers, good followers. This again we discussed this morning. Do you need to be a good follower to be a good leader? And the answer was yes. Because unless you know what kind of qualities are desirable in somebody who is leading you, you yourself will not be able to develop those qualities. Leadership ultimately is about making the right decisions at the right time. That is how I see it. And sometimes these decisions have to be made under enormous pressure. People may question, is physical hardship really necessary to develop leadership qualities? And I think the answer is yes. Not because there is virtue in physical suffering itself, in physical hardship itself, but because you have to be trained to develop what has been described as grace under pressure. Even under circumstances when you are under the greatest pressure, you must be able to keep a mind that is cool enough and quiet enough to be able to make the right decisions. The decision of somebody who is in a position of leadership can be crucial for all the followers. It can be a matter of life and death, not just for the one who makes the decision, but all those who are influenced by whatever decision he or she decides to make. So leadership is about the mind. This is why I agree with Philip Mason when he said that it was because of his moral and human qualities that General Slim was a great general. In other words, a great leader, a leader of man, a man who inspired confidence and trust. His book was entitled Defeat into Victory, and those who have read it will know that the war in Burma was going very badly when he took over as the head of the 14th Army, but in the end he led it to victory. And that, I think, is what we are trying to achieve in every part of the world, to turn defeat into victory. Defeat comes in many guises. It can come in political guise, in military guise, in economic guise. Defeat is something that we all have to learn to cope with. But we have to learn to turn it into victory without in any way compromising our own integrity. Victory at any price is not what a good leader strives for. Victory with his honor or her honor, as well as the honor of those who have trusted her or trusted him, intact. So leadership for me means service in the sense of always putting one's followers ahead of one, in front of one. They are the ones who really matter, not you yourself, who may be in a position of leadership, but whose worth will be decided only by what he or she manages to achieve for those who have accepted his or her leadership. I do not quite know whether all of you feel the same as I do about the necessary leadership qualities of our world, of which the army is only a part. Military men do not make up the whole world. Armies do not make up the whole world. They are just part of our world. And whether you like it or not, they are an essential part of our world. I, myself, have a great affection for the army. This has exposed me to much criticism, especially after decades of suffering under military dictatorship. Our people and those who support the movement of democracy are sometimes upset when I say that I have great affection for our army and also great hopes for it. But it is right that we should have respect and affection for an institution that is intended to be selfless. Selfless, I believe, is the core word for armies and for leaders. others before oneself. It's not for oneself that one should lead. That is why we say serve to lead. When General David Richards visited Burma a few months ago, we met him at the legislature, and a question was put to him. Do the British people love their army? And he said yes. And he said very proudly that according to the polls, the British people admired the army more than they admired doctors and the medical profession. And then he was asked why. And his answer started with, because you were seen as selfless. He said, we are seen as selfless. We sacrifice ourselves for people. And he added, not just for our own people, but for people anywhere in the world who might be in need of protection and of the kind of military defense that would give them more secure and fulfilling lives. So selfless is at the core of an honorable and respected army. And that is what I want the army of my country to be. And this is what mainly I have come to find out from you, to learn from you who are learning to serve, to lead. What do you think is needed to make an army that for decades has held political power understand that there is nothing more honorable than a professional army which is interested not in political power but in helping to uphold the will of the people as expressed through the democratic institutions. Burma is starting out on the road to democracy, but we are just starting out.